But let's look at why rejection hurts so bad. And let's look at it from a physical standpoint. We've looked at it from a spiritual standpoint. Now let's look at it from a physical standpoint. Rejection affects us mentally. It affects our relationships. It affects our mind. It affects our ability to think. It affects our emotion. Rejection has a set course, and that set course is called destruction. It's meant to keep the rejected person, or you, me, us. It's meant to keep us in a destructive, cyclical pattern and destructive, cyclical lies. Did you know that there is a part of the brain that when you get hurt physically, right, the brain, that part of your brain experiences or sends signals, right, saying, ow, that hurt. I stubbed my toe. And there's that part of the brain that says that's painful, right? They communicate. The brain communicates to the toe. The toe stubs it. The brain comes and says that's supposed to hurt. And then your mouth says, ow. Well, that's what it should say. I mean, some other people say other things, but really, we shouldn't. But my point is that part of the brain that reacts to the physical pain is the same part of the brain that reacts to rejection. So that part of the brain only knows one thing: pain. Rejection is painful. This physical thing that happened to the body over here, pain. They end up in the same place. Different routes, right? The route of what? Physical pain, the route of rejection, but it doesn't matter because they all meet in the same spot in the brain and creates this intense pain. Now, the interesting thing is, if you ask a mother who's given birth to explain to you exactly what that pain was, she'll use a lot of words but can't quite put her finger on it. But if you ask that same mother about an experience that she had with rejection, she can recount the whole thing verbatim. The brain says they both hurt, but the rejection is very vivid, and it relives it over and over again. Isn't that interesting? Same part of the brain. Now, another reason why rejection hurts so bad. Rejected people isolate themselves. And they do it well. Prophetic people go through quite a bit of rejection. And prophetic people isolate themselves quite a bit, and they have to remember to not isolate themselves. So rejected people isolate themselves. It's an interesting thing because the rejected person will isolate themselves in order to protect themselves from what? From pain, right? They will isolate themselves to prevent from being put in a situation of pain. But the problem with that thinking, that school of thought, is they're still reliving all the other rejection that they've experienced. So the thing that they're trying to avoid, they're not really avoiding. They are reliving it. They're going through it. They're replaying it over and over again. They're re-experiencing. They're rehashing it. They're beating that horse and beating that horse and beating that horse. And they continuously think on what? The same thing. But yet they isolate themselves to protect themselves. They feel lonely, so they isolate themselves. And then they turn around and they say, wow, nobody wants to be around me. Forgetting that the reason you feel that no one wants to be around you is because you isolated yourself. And the reason that you isolated yourself was because you have experienced rejection and you don't want to re-experience it or relive it again. But the truth is, you're still what? Reliving it. The difference is because you've isolated yourself, when we isolate ourselves, there's no one there to help us. Whereas the rejected person who says, I know I've been rejected. I know I'm in pain. I know this. Then they go and seek out. They don't isolate themselves. They go and they seek out. And the purpose of the seeking out is to receive what? Healing. They reach out to the Lord. Lord, what's my next step? Lord, what do I do? And they pray. And then, some people have to go to a therapist. Some people have to go to a counselor. Some people have to go to a psychologist. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe that's just the step that God wants you to take. There's nothing wrong with that. But isolating ourselves, there is something wrong with that. The best attack that the enemy can bring to the life of a rejected person is when they're in isolation. Not when they're in the group or in the pack or getting the help that they need. It's like the person that's rejected, again, they isolate themselves to not hurt, to not be rejected, but at the same time, they're rejecting help. They're rejecting the Lord. They're rejecting counseling. They feel what? They feel ostracized. But the lie will tell them, see, nobody wants to be with you. The Holy Spirit will come and say, no, there are people that want to be with you. There are people that love you, but you have isolated yourself. Then comes the other voice. You didn't isolate yourself. They isolated you. They pushed you out of their group. They don't want you. They don't want you because you're no fun. They don't want you because, and you can just complete that sentence. Go on from there. But again, that person is steady reliving and re-experiencing that rejection, that pain. There's a part of the brain, and we're still talking about the physical, there's a part of the brain that actually prioritizes the pain from rejection. Makes it a priority in our lives. So we have to know the spiritual side of things, but we also have to know the physical side of things. We have to know, okay, my brain is going to relive and re-experience this pain, and it's gonna make it a priority in its functions, or one of the priorities in its function. Okay, I know what my physical brain wants to do. Then here comes the enemy with these words. Right? This is the spiritual side of it. Doing what? Speaking these things that kind of coincide with the priority that the brain gives it. And the next thing you know, we're bound. We're bound by the thoughts. We're bound by the experience. We're bound by the wounds. We're bound by the hurt. We're bound by the man. We're bound by the woman. We're bound by all of these things that are there for us to relive over and over and over again, so that we never grow up, so that we never grow out, so that we never mature, so that we remain in a destructive state, so that we remain in death. Sometimes we relive because we're social creatures, guys. We are social creatures. We are meant to be a tribe. We're meant to be a family. And so when there's a break in that family and we're not part of it, all of a sudden, instead of us being on the inside, we're now on the outside of the family. that hurts. The brain says, yeah, that hurts. That is so painful, and it becomes very intense for us physically. And rejection, this is amazing, but rejection really does manifest in our physical bodies. It's not just a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual thing that manifests in a physical way. And oftentimes we don't think that. We don't think like that, do we? We don't think, wow, that rejection manifests in my body. And it could manifest in a whole myriad of ways, but it does manifest in our physical bodies. And maybe that's why we're tired sometimes, you know? You think about reliving the experience over and over again. Your mind is thinking on it and thinking on it and thinking on it. And all of a sudden you have a headache. All of a sudden you have a tension headache. All of a sudden you have a migraine because your mind is thinking on it and thinking on it and thinking on it. Then your body says, well, wait, that migraine is so intense. Everything in your body tries to accommodate, right, that migraine. And then all of a sudden, it's not just your brain. It's not just your thoughts. It's not just the spiritual. It's the physical. And now your whole body is responding to that experience that you're reliving, that you're going through over and over again. So it manifests in the body. So that's so often why some of us are not feeling well at times, because of the intensity of that rejection. It is so intense, and it is so dominant that our mind says, I'm giving that thing priority. Rejection has the potential of causing us to lose our mind. Rejection has the potential of confusing us, not just losing our mind, but confusing us. Have you ever wondered, in a prison system, right? They're all in the group, they're all socializing, and then one of them, somebody in that group really, does something horrible, then they put them where? In isolation. What are they doing? They're pulling them out of the group setting, putting them in isolation with the premise of, think about your behavior and you come out doing better the next time around. All right? But what happens is, depending on the strength of the mind, that isolation could make their situation worse mentally. You pull a person out of their social, tribal, family environment, even in a prison system. And the more you pull them out, the longer they stay out, the less apt they are to socialize back when they get back into the system. Something happens to the mind. And it begins to work on the mind in such a way that people have been known to lose their mind in the process. Because again, we have a need to belong and to be part of a group, to be part of a society, to be part of a tribe, be part of a family. When we experience rejection, what happens is we literally become, let's say this is the family unit, right? And every finger is a family member, whether it's a spiritual family, a natural family, whether it's a society, a group setting, a club, whatever the case may be. But, everybody's getting along, everybody's in the group, and then something happens to somebody in the group, and then suddenly they're what? Pulled apart. What happens? They're ostracized. They're disconnected. And what ends up happening is that person who has been pulled out of there, who's been ostracized, they have actually been disconnected from the group. Now what do they feel? They feel isolated. Once they're pulled apart, it begins to destabilize them. And it could destabilize them in their mind, in their thinking process. Apostle, can you come over here a minute? I'm going to use him as a demonstration. I can't go too far because my little. Okay, so we are designed to be connected. So let's connect. We are designed to be connected. All right. So as long as we're connected, we can encourage one another. We can help one another out. But in the moment that one of us experiences rejection, let's say me, let's say that in that moment I experienced that rejection because Apostle says something, Apostle did something that made me feel rejected, or maybe something he said kind of ties into something that's happened in my past that I have not been able to, that I've not been healed from. In that moment, what happens is I become disconnected. And when I become disconnected from my family unit, from my tribe, from my society, whatever you want to call it, when I become disconnected, I begin to what? Isolate. And I become isolated. And as I become isolated, my mind keeps playing it over and over again, what he said or what he did. While my mind is playing it over and over and over again, here comes the enemy to do what? To validate what I'm thinking in my mind, what my mind has made a priority. So what chance do I have if I isolate myself, if my mind makes it a priority, and the enemy comes and does his thing? I have my only shot at this is Christ Jesus. He's the only one that can help me out of this situation. He's the only one that could help me to see and understand and quiet the voice of the enemy. The enemy, thank you. The enemy came to, thank you, Apostle. The enemy came to isolate me. The enemy came to silence me. The enemy came to bring destruction. And now what do? I go to God. And meanwhile, I say, you know what? Lord, I'm asking you to help me through this. I am not going to stay in this situation. And we should begin to seek the Lord out to find out what's going on. Where did this come from? How did this happen? What am I tapping into? Is it something recent? Is it something from my past? Did my past meet my present and create this bondage? And God will help us. God will help us. So that what? So that we can stabilize again. Once I pull away, I become unstable. And a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. All right? So we have to be careful. We can't remain in that position. So we find that rejection also creates anger and aggression. According to Psychology Today, in 2001, the Surgeon General of the U.S. issued a report stating that rejection was a greater risk for adolescent violence than drugs, poverty, or gang membership. And they went on to say that countless studies have demonstrated that even mild rejections lead people to take out their aggression on innocent bystanders. Have you ever felt like that? Has something ever happened to you and you took it out on somebody else who had nothing to do with any of it? But listen to this. School shootings, violence against women, and fired workers going, quote unquote, postal are other examples of strong links between rejection and aggression. When we take a look at these school shootings that have taken place in the past, I don't know about the Colorado one because I'm not up to speed on why that happened. But when we take a look at these shootings that have taken place at school, more times than not, it's because a group of people rejected one person or a couple of people, and they got to the point where they said, enough is enough, and that rejection turned into aggression, that turned into violence, and next thing you know, they're going around shooting students and teachers and everyone that they can find along the way. That is because that rejection has turned into aggression. But here's another interesting piece, and we kind of touched down on this in the beginning. Rejection causes us to attack ourselves. Isn't that interesting? So not only was I rejected, right? I was rejected, and then I took that rejection and I began to attack myself with that same rejection. So maybe I didn't just experience rejection from another person. I have their rejection plus my undivided, focused attention on what they did to me, and then I begin to attack myself. And all I do is go into a deeper state of emotional pain. This is why we cannot fixate on what the enemy is attempting to plant in our mind by releasing that seed, by releasing that word. You know, it's possible that the person may or may not have rejected you. That is very possible. It's possible that they really weren't rejecting you, that it's really just your past rejection still alive and well, and your perception of what took place, what they said, what they did or didn't do or didn't say. It is your perception that you were rejected, when in actuality, maybe you weren't rejected. But rejection has a way of magnifying itself. So again, when we're rejected, or we perceive that we're being rejected, then we reject ourselves. We keep that cycle, that destructive cycle and of death and lies, we keep it alive. And again, it only comes to destroy us. Rejection comes to silence us, to destroy us. Whether it can kill us, or, because remember, that is a spirit. So whether it can kill us, isolate us, right? It doesn't matter. Silence us. It's all death, but death of a different kind. If you're prophetic and you're dealing with rejection, and that thing comes to silence you, well, that's death to you spiritually, and you're unable to release the word of the Lord to a people, to a church, or to a nation, because your voice was silenced by rejection. So rejection will come to destroy you on a spiritual level and or a physical level. If rejection can take you out, some people commit suicide because of the rejection. And the enemy is great. Well, one less human being on the face of this earth, one less believer on the face of this earth. Not too long ago, a pastor committed suicide. And this, that's sad on so many different levels, but it's also sad because there are people who could have benefited still from his life and from the words of life that God gave him. But instead, what happened is he took his life. So that is that's a physical destruction, which is what that spirit would love to see in each and every one of us. To destroy us physically, so we're no longer on the face of the earth. Well, that wasn't successful. All right. Well, let me then silence them so that at least they're not speaking to anyone. They're not speaking words of love, words of encouragement, words of life, words of light. They're not speaking prophetic words into their life. They're not telling them, what the Lord has for them and encouraging them in the things of the Lord. Well, that'll work. That'll work. Why? Because they've silenced themselves. Well, nobody wants to hear me, so why am I going to speak? So let me just be quiet because nobody wants to hear me anyway. And as we said before, rejection makes it difficult for us to make important decisions. And it keeps us from experiencing joy. Why? Because we are too tied up in reliving and re-experiencing that perceived or real rejection.
We hope you have enjoyed the Fire in You program. Please feel free to share this empowering message with family and friends, and visit us at our webpage at www.seedofnationsinternationalcenter.org. That's www.seedofnationsinternationalcenter.org. And please feel free to share your prayer request, testimony, or partner with us through your tax-deductible giving. Your donation will help us continue delivering inspiring messages to nations. You may also subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button. To receive alerts of future Fire in You programs, just press the notification button. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For additional articles, please visit and subscribe to our blog at sonpropheticvoice.wordpress.com. That's sonpropheticvoice.wordpress.com. Until next time, friends, remember, the fire is in you.